Shalom, salam, blessed be and amen. Hey, this is my first time back since March of 2020 in a live pulpit. Yeah. And now I've been Zooming all over. I mean, Schenectady, New York, Bakersfield, California, all in my shorts behind a desk, right? Now, there are pluses to hybrid. There's pluses to Zooming. And I imagine, as you're doing here in Tapestry as a pace setter, you're blending the two, and I respect that deeply. But for me, as 54 years in the ministry, there's nothing quite like connecting personally with people. That's why I went into it. And I want to start by thanking Reverend Kent for his support, professional support. Without that, I don't appear here. And Connie Purcell, my worship associate. We had to travel around the area, Connie, because you've been a fine worship associate for so long with me. And your words on death and the practicality of preparing, pay heed to what she said. I cover a lot of that in my book, with a lot of dealing with reckoning with our past. Who are we? What do we want to leave behind? What do we want to clean up? That's all about how we make peace with a good death. This is one of my special places to be here. I'm turning 80 this year, a couple months. I'm not going to be traveling to Ventura, probably from San Diego and other places, although I'm doing some workshops in Arizona when it opens up. But coming here, I hope, can be an annual visit as long as I'm able. And you're willing to have me. I'd love to do that and be that. My two of my best male friends died recently. One eagerly wanting to halt a pain-saturated existence, and the other one passing away prematurely of an unexpected illness. Now, we had covenanted for both of these younger brothers to speak at my memorial service. But lamentably, I ended up speaking of theirs. And this duo of heart-wrenching deaths has placed my own mortality front and center. Not in a morbid way, not in a morose way, but in a focused way. And I'm reminded of Thornton Wilder's poignant line, "There's a land of the living and the land of the dead, and the bridge is love. The only truth, the only survival is love. Only love conquers death. Nathan and Paul won't return in person. Only in love. Only in love do I have them still." I know you can identify with my heart. My sermon title comes from a quote from the naturalist, one of our best in America, Wallace Stegner, who wrote, "I've been lucky. I came from nowhere and had no reason to expect as much from this one life as I've got. I owe God a death, and the earth a pound or so of chemicals. Now, let's see if I can remember that when my time comes." You and I surely owe God, the universe, ourselves, and all whom we meet along the path one death, especially following a full and generous existence. And it must be paid when it comes our time to return to the earth. Picture two children talking to one another around a tree, and the younger one says, "It's a beautiful tree, isn't it?" "Yeah, it sure is," says the older child, "but it's a shame we won't be around to enjoy it when it's fully grown." And the younger one moans, "But why? Where are we going?" You see, young children don't really envision death or a finish line, and that's why that story of Leo Bastaglia was particularly poignant and relevant. Especially not their own at a young age. They understand sleep and separation, but not death, not the cessation of physical life. But we adults sure have our share of trouble with the same theme, don't we? I mean, we tend to resist mortality at every turn. America is clearly, we're getting better, but we're still a death-defying culture. Note a recent ARP magazine lead article, front page, 20 ways to live longer. And I retort, how about 5 ways to live stronger, thicker, and more meaningfully? Will we face death in 10 weeks, or 10 years, or several decades? Across the street from where we live in San Diego, Carolyn and I just learned last week that a young woman in her 30s has a husband and 2 young girls just died unexpectedly. Before I got in the car this morning, I dropped a note of condolence in her mailbox, in his mailbox. And which particular indignities might be in store for you and me? Well, whether death comes later or sooner as a relief or as an outrage, we humans need to be prepared. That means making sufficient peace with its inevitability. There's mindful eating, there's mindful working, there's mindful meditating, there's mindful loving. There also needs to be mindful dying. Ironically, just when all the world's great minds were beginning to accept that death is death, along comes a sane and respectable person a while back by the name of Raymond Moody. You probably remember him, with credentials in medicine, philosophy, and psychiatry, a wonderful blend, who suggests that we should consider the phenomenon reported by people who've been clinically dead, but then resuscitated by modern emergency medical techniques. And their experiences have a lot in common and seem to suggest that the first stages of death appear to be spiritually positive. Many of those interviewed felt a feeling of peace and wholeness, and none of them was ever afraid to die again. Now that's reassuring news, especially to any of us who've been frightened about what might happen to us following death. However, these common components in no way provide conclusive evidence of an afterlife. We don't really know what goes on in the brain as the body begins to die. We're all making conjectures, aren't we? Even capable researchers included. Personally, I've come to a sort of benevolent agnosticism on the question of life after death or life after life. I don't anticipate one. I don't hunger for one, but there just might be one. And as a universalist who believes in everlasting love, I harbor no worries. Because whatever happens when I die, love will be the container. What a beautiful anthem he's saying. Because of love. That's why we're here. And that's where we're going. That's where my mother and I came to agree, Mom from her Christian perspective and I from a Universalist Unitarian perspective. Whether or not there's life after death, there is surely love after death. Eternal love. As Unitarian Universalists Beth Norton in music and Rebecca Parker lyrics craft in their poignant chant. There is a love holding me. There is a love holding you. There is a love holding all. We rest in that love. That's our gospel, and I'm living by it. Now, whether death is final or not, it remains real, and we need to come to peace with that. Whether it's a transition or a conclusion, it still happens. As the World Health Organization reports, the world death rate is holding steady at 100%. I'll go further. Unless we make adequate peace with our own personal deaths, we tend to remain cautious, maybe even cowards about life and what we have remaining of life and all of its faces, the good as well as the evil. Consenting to die, as the poet W.H. Auden put it, consenting to die is a critical awareness and a conscious decision during our earthly journey. As we say in our Unitarian Universalist memorial celebrations, right at the outset, Josephina Dokes has died, and you and I are alive, and so we know who's still breathing in the room and who isn't. The spirit may live on, but the body of the dead person has irretrievably expired, and that difference must be saluted rather than camouflaged in euphemisms like he's gone away, or she's passed on, or transitioned. Dying is dying. Death cannot be tamed. Death is unknown. Death is mysterious. Let's just say that death is death. As our Unitarian Universalist poet laureate Rick Maston, who was a dear friend of ours and died about 12 years ago. Maybe you remember Rick. He's a poet laureate and singer who would go around to all of our congregations. He used to bellow, "Hey folks, remember we're all terminal on this war." And the central key to living fully is acknowledgement of that fact. Death's not only inevitable, it's also natural in the overall sweep of things. About 500 million years ago, all of life was composed of algae and amoeba, of a unified, continuous existence growing at one end and sloughing at the other. And into that world of endless glob came the transfiguring event of death. Without death, life could never have arisen out of the immortal slime. And now death and life are inextricably linked. Both constitute necessary and sanctified gifts of one supreme reality. For without death, there would be neither that which we love nor the ability to love at all. I'll go even further. Death is desirable as well as inevitable and natural, especially for those of us blessed with a robust and full existence. And I'm not merely referring to certain deaths that bring relief or release from agony. Let me explain it. Years back, prior to my coming to Tapestry, I was on a television show, a discussant, featuring a dialogue on immortalism. That's a philosophy that we can, we should, and we will live forever. And the spokesperson for this approach of cryogenics seemed relatively unfazed by my remarks, until I unabashedly announced that even if I could live forever in my current condition, I'd likely turn down the offer. I didn't hanker for everlastingness. He was incredulous. He was flabbergasted, and for the remainder of the dialogue kept trying to persuade me that everyone who was anyone wanted to live forever. His exact words were, "No one in their right mind really wants to die." And I said, "I do someday. I do." And I proceeded to elaborate. First of all, I said, I find most notions of eternal life or paradise singularly uninteresting. Oh, it'd be nice in many cases, but not all, folks, to reconnect with departed friends and family. You know whereof I speak. And certainly not to entertain an interminable sameness of our bonds. And who wants eternal bliss? Without the presence of sorrow and struggle, perpetual existence would prove oppressively bland. Did you hear an evangelist ever describe heaven in terms of the challenges waiting to be faced? Or in terms of passion, or toil, or justice? No, it's always in Elysian fields, a sort of Palm Springs with a year-round irrigation system. Terrible constancy, no further growth or change taking place, destitute of variation or wrestling, boring, eternally boring. But to put it positively, death's presence intensifies my capacity to love and my desire to create meaning. Every moment with which I'm blessed grows precious starting this afternoon. My life possesses daily urgency and challenge because I won't always be around. I embrace life all the more because it's limited. My dad died at 81 and a half. So did my father-in-law. That's about the average length of a man's existence, maybe a year or two more now. What leads me to believe in 2 months when I turn 80 that I'll get more than that number? That's another reason I'm wrestling mightily and playfully through poetry and songs and workshops and sermons with mindful dying. So I praise a world that will not be forever. If it were to be here forever, if we were to be here forever, there'd be no reason to take special notice of this irrepeatably fresh summer of 2021 where we're breaking through, despite the variants, we're breaking through to a new kind of existence. I just ordered the Amazon mask for singing in the nursing homes, a special kind of mask. There'd be an eternity of summers to notice, right? So it wouldn't matter if we missed one or two or a dozen of them. If we're going to live forever, it doesn't matter if we miss a person or two, right? There will always be time for other people if we have an eternity. No, it's because we don't have an eternity with one another that we must seize the time for one another and create congregations such as Tapestry. We treasure each singular person precisely because we just might not experience another one. How many of us would clean up the environment or belt out songs or grow a beloved community or travel the world or raise healthy children or volunteer at the homeless center or do anything of much importance if we believe we had an eternity in which to do it? I don't see many hands going up. A good death permits us to be pretty much the same person dying as we were when we're alive. That's a good death. A good death doesn't mean I'll die peacefully, although I'd like that. A good death is more than going to sleep one night and not waking up, although I'll take that too. A good death is when I go into the ground essentially clean of regrets and resentments, sufficiently serene, and with my goodbyes in order. Do you or I have something we want to say or be or do before we die? If so, let's get to it. What are we waiting for? Now's the time to come clean and current in all our bonds and duties. For my 80th birthday, Carolyn asked me, okay, do you want a celebration for the family in October? Do you want to have something at the church? Maybe by then it'll be opened up at First Church in San Diego. I said, Carolyn, to be truthful, I just want to make some trips. I want to see some people. I want to see my brother and his wife in the Bay Area. I want to see their daughter who had a brain aneurysm in her early 50s and is struggling. I want to see our daughter in Santa Barbara suffering from lupus, had an early case of COVID. She's struggling with lupus. Not the same. I want the grandkids, her children, to smell me again. And yeah, we're going to go to New Orleans and Memphis and Nashville for some country music and pop and taste of Elvis and others, if we can get on in October. But Carolyn, when we turn our 50th anniversary, when it was unpredicted, in 2 years, I want to have a blast if we're around. We do it different ways. There's not a right way. I'm just telling you out loud what I'm after. I've come to recognize that my name won't last forever. Maybe sooner forgotten than I desire or imagine. And my labors and visions likely lost in the shuffle. And surely all my sermons and books will be taken to the dump. If not by my children or grandchildren, by somebody. Somebody sometime along the line, right? But I do hope that my peculiar struggles, my reckoning with my own evil, and my curious gifts will influence a slew of people in some small way for some span of time. How about you, my siblings? How about you? We will die, and so will our comrades and loved ones. Yet we homestretchers experience those we've cherished living on in our souls after our earthly sojourns. We stay allied with the land of the dead, remember, the territory of the ancestors, through the medium of love. And there's more comforting news for us Unitarian Universalists. Oh yeah. Just as we were graciously ushered into being as a gift beyond our earning, there will be love, and I capitalize L-O-V-E there, surrounding us after we die. Everlasting love is our universalist phrase. Everybody gets in, or nobody gets in, to that embrace of eternal love. I don't know what form it's going to take. I'm not interested in discussing it or debating it. No one knows. The only important thing is that we declare, while we're living, with unshakable fervor and hope, that the very love that created us will surely caress and comfort us beyond our death into illimitable seasons. That's good news and enough reassurance for me. Yes, we owe God this indescribably marvelous universe and ourselves and all creaturely companions one death. One will do, especially if we've had a full and generous ride into elderhood, unlike Sister Kim across the street. And may this debt be willingly and gladly paid when our turn comes to re-enter the ground of all being. I say gladly because we're placed on earth to find and deliver joy. That's why we're here. And when our light finally goes out, if we're fortunate, our souls will echo the glorious and soothing passage from Isaiah and the Hebrew Scriptures. For you shall go out in joy and be led forth in peace. The mountains and the hills before you shall break forth into singing, and all the trees of the field shall clap their hands. May it come to pass.